4, 3.
Yummy like a gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for August 14th, 2023 for the next hour or so. Let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, the PS5 Slim doesn't look very slim, and people think Final Fantasy VII Remake might be heading to Xbox. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host of Game Mess Mornings. It's Lex Luddy, everybody. Lexi, how are you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. I got to watch the American rugby team get their shit handed to them
That's what
by
happens.
a Portuguese side that is made up of non-professionals who are all going back home to be dentists the next day and shit.
That all sounds right. Listen, we sent our just 50th best athletes to the rugby thing. Not even. That's like too good.
Oh yeah, I love American rugby because you've put so much money into it, and most Americans still don't even know it exists.
Yeah, that trying to catch up to other sports doesn't work. The thing where America really gets out ahead is like, what if we just put all the money into women's sports? And then it's like, and then that we'll dominate that for 30 years, and now that's finally stopping in soccer, where they got knocked out of the World Cup. But it's like, yeah, if you want to dominate a sport, just put a bunch of money into women's sports. Like that's the way to do it. And catching up on rugby.
The good news is the World Cup will be on in the USA not this year, but the World Cup after.
Yes.
And you didn't even qualify for this year's World Cup, so at least you're guaranteed to qualify for the next World Cup.
Well, that's been our strategy. We're just going to do a long rest period. We're just going to rest for how many years?
We're rebuilding.
Yeah, exactly.
4 years.
Yeah, so we're going to do a little 4-year nappy poo and be ready for that World Cup, and then we're going to dominate. We're going to dominate. Tell you what, the amount of money that America might put into something when it's not in America, I promise you they'll spend a lot more when it is in America, so that so it's not to be embarrassed. And
the one good thing about America, whenever they host a World Cup or something, even if it's the sport they don't like, you're really good at having like a big fucking crowd cheer at shit. Like you really enjoy it.
I'll tell you what, you know what though? Still undefeated in football. America #1. I'm sorry, American football.
I was going to say, no.
We've won every year. We won the Super Bowl every year. It's been pretty good so far. All right. I don't know. How you doing, though, otherwise?
I'm not doing too bad. I'm going down a deep, dark hole of getting into, like, PS1 and PS2 games. Now that I got my CRT working, revived my PS2. Got like a PAL version of Metal Gear Solid 1. I was like, this isn't how I'm going to play it, but I own it now.
Yeah, it's good to have it. That way you have it. It's just there. Like, but man, yeah, that sounds good. The PAL version of Metal Gear Solid, I'm assuming 50 frames per second or something like that?
Yes. So I did compare it to, I had it running off an emulator on my Steam Deck, which is also super fun. Running a Steam Deck on a CRT is like maybe the most cursed thing you could do. I started playing Sayonara Wild Hearts on a CRT, and holy shit, that looked fucking incredible.
God, those phosphors just burning light into your eyeballs with like new games. That's good stuff. I love that. I'm still waiting for my part to get here to actually get this Mister working with this CRT over here. But I've been messing around a little bit still and having a good time with it. I think I might buy another CRT. I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to get in trouble. My mod's always yell at me. 2
CRTs for?
Well, this one's a production monitor, so it doesn't have I want a dirty composite input. I want I don't want the good stuff. I didn't grow up on the good stuff. Why would I'm not nostalgic for the good stuff, Lexi. Give me that shitty, dirty composite signal, and that's how I want to live my life. So I might try to find like an even older TV and get that. That's right. I'm a dirty composite.
I'm very close to hooking up the PS3 that I have in my place to the CRT, because that's how I originally played Dark Souls, was on that old fucking CRT that then went to our grandparents' house for about 10 years, and now is back in our house because my dad wanted to dump it. And I was like, don't fucking dump it. It's mine.
What is the newest game? Like, what is the last game everyone played on CRT? If anyone wants to put that in the comments, put that in the chat, I would love to read that. I think I definitely played games after this on CRT, but the last one I really remember, and it was like, oh, I got to get an HD TV. It was Modern Warfare, Call of Duty 4. That was the one was like, we're playing that on CRT, and that actually going HDT, I'm like, it actually didn't help that much. I feel like I always performed better when I was on CRT, but
I mean, there was less input latency.
Yeah.
You're a true gamer on a CRT.
Exactly. That was, games were made for CRT, and then we looked at God, we spat in his face, and we're like, give us LCDs, because we are ungrateful animals, is what we are. All right, we got a lot to do on this show, so we should explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Okay, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with, is this the PS5 Slim? This is from Tom Warren over at The Verge. Let me actually see if I can bring this up real quick.
I thought legally Tom was only allowed to write about Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard.
Right, I mean, something we've slipped out of the time stream somewhere, apparently, and now he's doing this as well. This is a video of the PS5 Slim. If you're watching the video, you can actually see that, but I'll read this story here. Sony has been rumored to be working on a revision of the PlayStation 5, often referred to as the PS5 Slim, that includes a removable disk drive. Now images and a video have leaked of a PS5 model that looks slimmer and slightly shorter, and may well have a removable disk drive. The first image leaked of the rumored PS5 Slim in a Chinese forum earlier last week, and now a leaked video provides a better look at this rumored device. The video from Better Way Electronics, an Australian PlayStation repair specialist, shows off the plastic case of a potential future model of the PS5. It has a bulge for the disk drive, a curve in the middle with a smaller space for vents, two slits on each side of the case, and dual USB-C ports on the front instead of the single USB-C and USB-A ports found on the current PS5 models. Sorry, it's too early for the word slit. I'm sorry. It just is. Okay, real quick, Lexi, looking at this thing, it looks neat. It looks like a PS5 still. It looks fat still, though. I would not call this a Slim.
As someone that's had body image issues for a long time, I'm very dissatisfied with all of the body shaming going on here.
Of course, I get that. Yes.
Lots of people struggle, and the PlayStation 5 is doing its best. And it tries
not
to
Weight Watchers. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And like, it doesn't need your shit mounting on it. It doesn't need your sly comments.
But at least it's also short. Like, it's got that going. So it's short and wide, the perfect body type.
Yeah, that's popular these days. It has like a dad bod.
Exactly. And it also has a badonkadonk. It's got that thing sticking out there.
When you go back and you look at those old PS3 Slims, the first PS3 Slims, they're not that much slimmer than the original PS3 like chunky boy. They're maybe like 20-30% slimmer, and then it was until the Super Slim that they actually did get really thin. So I think it's just we're kind of a bit spoilt by how smart. It's very easy for everything to look huge next to a Switch and everything to look huge next to a Series S. And when you have consoles that small on the market, anything will look big. Also, like, this is one video, and it's stupid to say, but we don't know how big this guy's hands are.
I mean, you're right. Like, we have no idea.
The only comparison we have in that video is this guy's hands.
Yeah, you're right. We need a banana for scale, right? We need a quarter down there for someone to put that down there. This is this is not enough for me, is what I want to say. It's not enough for me to be like, oh, I might buy this thing or something like that. Almost certainly I'm not going to buy it no matter what. But seeing this, it's like, well, that look isn't so much different, and I already got the PS5 I want. But if it has a bunch of extra storage and all that stuff, maybe this moves the needle for me. I just wonder, like, for a general audience, it probably, I don't think people are looking at this to be like, now is the time to jump into a PS5. I think this goes back to saving money for Sony. Clearly, this is the revision to, like, let's make all of the big changes now so that this thing is cheaper to manufacture going forward, and we can, like, start on new footing for the rest of the generation. That's still what this looks like to me, right? And
it's definitely like them. Another reason that they do this is simply like, hey, it's been 3 years. We're out of the pandemic now. The like hype is starting to wear off. The fervor is starting to wear off. What if we just had a new thing on shelves?
Yes.
And people like having a new thing on shelves. They like going into a store and seeing a new thing. And even if it isn't that much different, it's going to be in a smaller box. It will be able to take up more space on shelves. Like it will, or you'll be able to fit more on the same space shelf. And yeah, I think why not? If you can make it smaller, you may as well. It's not a Pro, it's nothing like that. But like, yeah, it's fine. And people who get mad about the PlayStation 5 design, like, grow up. Consoles used to be boring for a long time. We had a bunch of years of just black boxes, and it's nice that one of these consoles isn't a black box anymore. Like, it's nice that we're going back to like the weird designs of the GameCube and everything like that. Like, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I am too, and I do think that mostly I'm glad that they kept the general design language of the PS5. I want the PS5 to look like this. I know a lot of people think it's ugly. I like you said, grow up, get over it. These are USB-C ports on the front. I guess looking at that, if I unfocus my eyes and I try to like scale, like do the scale math in my brain, this thing does look a bit slimmer and it does look a bit smaller. Honestly, it's still that disk drive that is throwing me off. Do you think that, because the rumor is that there's an attachable like disk drive, and so do you think you could take this cover off, remove the disk drive, and then you got yourself a PS5 digital, the new version of the PS5 digital, and that's what's going to be on store shelves? And like when you okay, so let's say you get the cheaper model that they're probably still going to have that doesn't come with the disk drive. Do you think that if you were to go out and buy a disk drive, it's going to come with this panel and the drive, and it just snaps on to the PS5?
I'd say, like, the only way it makes sense is if the disk drive is a separate purchase, because that's the only way they'd make extra money off of it. So why would they even make it detachable if they weren't going to try to sell it to you separately? But, like, it really does reek of, and I know someone who bought a PS5 this weekend and was setting it up and was like, I don't fucking know how to set this stand up. Like, this stand is weird. And it's the whole over-engineering symptom that this entire system has had, where it just, like, it's way more complex than it needs to be in ways that just don't make sense. Like, if you're going to make a detachable disk drive, why would you package it with the console itself? Why not just keep it attached? I really don't know where all the detachable disk drive stuff is coming from, but I can't imagine it being sold separately.
Yeah, it does seem like the kind of thing where it's like they probably engineered the hell out of this thing, and they're like, we can do this, and this is like the way it makes sense to sort of have the one SKU on shelves, and then this can be a peripheral going forward, peripheral or attachment, detachment, whatever. Yeah, and looking at it, it looks like that's plausible still. I think that still seems like probably what's happening here, like that they have some version that going forward, this is going to be the one PS5 SKU, and that lines up with them trying to sell a ton of PS5s with the discounts in the UK and throughout Europe and stuff like that. So we've seen them move in that direction of them trying to get PS5 sold as much as possible, and then that means this thing, because this thing is rumoredly coming soon. If it is, I mean, I think we could hear about this thing as soon as this week, maybe next week. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Sony aren't going to Gamescom, but it wouldn't stop them from getting on that Gamescom news trail where everyone's online and looking for news. And I am curious now that, like, because the big thing coming out of Microsoft for a long time was like, oh, the Xbox Series X doesn't have to be this big. We just want it to be able to cool like a motherfucker. So I'm curious how hot this thing will run, and if they have managed to optimize everything within it so much that now it doesn't get hot.
Yeah,
because that base PS5, like, there were times when I was in college where I was like, I don't need to turn on the heating this evening. I'll just play some fucking video games, and like that will keep me warm enough. It got fucking hot.
Yeah, space heaters and computers use about the same amount of energy and produce about the same amount of heat. So instead of getting a space heater, just open the side of your computer, turn off the fans, and just let it boil your room. In terms of the cooling, they've been working on that this entire generation. They've been, they like Database in chat. Jesse's saying like, oh, they were running really high clock speeds, and that's one of the reasons the PlayStation 5 was so big. They were clearly like, we need to take precautions here. Let's just be extra safe and make sure we have a ton of extra cooling. And we saw them be like, pretty soon in their first revision, not making many changes except for using less cooling on the cooling assembly, less material on the cooling assembly. And it's like, oh, they knew that they had a ton of overhead there and that they were being overly cautious. So that was a good place to save money. But since then, they've switched to the smaller process. And, that means like the chips themselves they're smaller, basically, produce less heat. And as the result of that, they've already cut down the size of their motherboard in preparation for this thing. So all this stuff is already lined up for them. Now it's like this slim model goes back to this isn't really for us. It's for Sony. It's to save Sony money. And that's perfectly fine. That's what all these companies have done this a million times, and they're going to keep doing it. I'm waiting to hear them give the sales pitch on it, and to hear like, is this the kind of thing where it's like a new 3DS where they expect people who are their biggest fans to come through and buy this thing, or is that going to be like the PS5 Pro next year or something like that? That's going to be where people
I have no
actually
idea
get the
how you
rollout
would
again.
sell this. Yeah, I have no idea how you'd sell this to someone that already has a PS5 if it's just a smaller PS5, like unless you're that strapped for desk space or space under your TV, like at this point you've found the space for it. If you own it, you've already made the space for that big fucking thing. The only way anyone would be upgrading a PS5 at the moment is if there was some new thing about power, about horsepower, about features. But if it's just another PS5, it's just another PS5.
Yep. Lexi, Tommy Dingo, and Twitch chat's upset that you were in college when the PS5 came out. So
I'm still in college, Tommy Dingo.
All dust. This official deleted image has people guessing if Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming to Xbox. This is from Mohammed Hassan at DualShockers. The official Xbox Brazil account shared a celebratory Father's Day image, albeit now deleted, featuring several game protagonists alongside their children. However, many fans noticed that Barrett and his daughter Marlene from Final Fantasy VII Remake were included in the collage, even though the game they star in isn't available on Xbox platforms as the time of this writing. This has a lot of people thinking that Xbox Brazil knows something that we don't, and that Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming to Xbox, which might be true, maybe.
It has me thinking that I am so glad I don't have to run any of these accounts.
Yes, exactly. That's what it really is. This is the kind of, let me just tell you, people out there, that, I deal in rumors. I deal in leaks and stuff like that. It's a tough game because that stuff is so compartmentalized. It is so, I was on Kit and Krista's podcast talking to them. Yes, I'm a merchant of leaks, as Jan says. I was on Kit and Krista's podcast. They used to work at Nintendo of America, the Nintendo Treehouse. And it was funny, yeah, we would talk about your leaks all the time, Jeff. And I'm like, oh yeah. And it was always weird because that stuff is so, we didn't always know everything. And barely anyone at Nintendo America knows anything. This stuff is so compartmentalized that it's hard to imagine how that process even works. And I'm like, well, it doesn't most of the time. Getting these leaks confirmed is very, very difficult. The idea that something like this is happening and the social media person at Xbox Brazil knows, I mean, it's possible. It's possible that it's a known, obvious thing, and because it's about to get announced or something. What's more likely here, though, right, Lexi, is that the person that created the art for this post just likes Final Fantasy VII, didn't think about it all that hard, right?
Yeah, if you're getting into a job where you're a social media manager for a video game company, you probably play video games, you're thinking about famous game dads, and you're like, oh, I like Barrett, whatever. And the biggest thing about this is these two things could be extremely true independently.
Yeah, exactly.
Final Fantasy VII could be coming to Xbox literally any day, whenever they want. They could announce it at Gamescom. They could do whatever. And also, this guy might have just had a brief to make a Father's Day social media post and was like, well, I'll just add some fucking dads. Dad's a hot dad, I guess. Barrett's a hot dad.
I think Final Fantasy is very popular in Brazil, because I think Final Fantasy 14 is growing there, and I think the whole franchise is pretty popular. The idea that someone who's been into games and got a gaming industry job in Brazil, they're just thinking about Final Fantasy. That just happens. So, and then that's a dad in a game that I'm aware of. And then they just didn't think about it too hard. But, do you think this is going to, because Final Fantasy VII Remake's relatively old now, several years old now at this point. They're about to release Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the follow-up to Remake. early next year, I guess was what they're saying. They might have given a date. I forget it, but that's happening soon. The game came out to PC, remake did, and never came to Xbox. Do you think that there's a chance it could come to Xbox like around the time of Rebirth hitting PS5?
I was just checking there. Final Fantasy Crisis Core did come to Xbox.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Because that game it is part of the Final Fantasy VII lore. Like, that, it's a big part of that universe. And it seems like it's going to be an even bigger part of their new retconned universe or whatever.
Yeah.
And it feels like this should have happened a year ago. It feels like this should have happened maybe 2 years ago.
Right.
And it's weird that it didn't. And now that it hasn't for so long, my sort of thought was like, is it even worth the porting effort? Is it even worth the money that they'd make from it coming to Xbox? If people really wanted to play Final Fantasy VII at this point, they could have played it on a Steam Deck. They could have played it on things that are not very high barrier to entry, like PCs. So I think most people have played it if they want to, but it would be nice for it to be there purely because they have part of the rest of the story there, and it doesn't really make sense. I absolutely hate it when a sequel, like, I really got annoyed. When I was young, I was so annoyed that the first Mass Effect was on PS3 because it was a Microsoft published game, and I just didn't realize that it was like a Microsoft published game at the time. But that always annoyed me, that the only way PS3 players could play it was like by reading a graphic novel in Mass Effect 3 or something. So yeah, I think they should just bring it over. If they're going to do it, they may as well. It's an easy enough win for them.
Yep. It's a lot of it comes down to like, what is the deal? I mean, obviously Sony got very horny for Final Fantasy, and it's like, we are going to give you money. We're going to give you a lot of money because we want Final Fantasy to be associated with PlayStation, and that means Final Fantasy 16 is hella exclusive. But
it only sold 3 million copies, which was a massive disappointment.
Exactly.
So that didn't work out for them in the long run.
Yeah, nothing works out. Absolutely. So they're not making enough money. Speaking of making money, we're going to be right back after this. All right, we're back. Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl may have just been given a December 2023 release date. That's from George Yang at IGN. Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl may have been given a December 1st, 2023 release date, according to distributor PlayOn's website. First spotted by WCCF Tech, the official German PlayOn store, is the one that has a listing for Stalker 2, Chernobyl on PC with a December 1st release date, and it describes the game as a unique mix of first-person shooter, horror, and immersive sim. It also mentioned it has survival mechanics for hunger, sleep, and bleeding, as well as a dynamic day and night cycle with realistic weather effects. Tell you what, any survival game these days, Lexi, that doesn't have a teeth meter, I played one with a teeth meter, like how many teeth you still have. You're a coward. You need to have a teeth meter in your game. Especially when
I feel like that'd
radiation.
be really dark in a game where like radiation is a big problem, just like your teeth. That would be real fucked up.
Pretty grim. It's like they're just falling out. Like you brushed, but they're just falling out still. That's just radiation, homie. Oh shit. I've been reading that American Prometheus. So I'm thinking a lot about radiation these days. Stalker 2 is one that was going to come out, I think, last year, and it got delayed. Obviously, this is partially made in Ukraine, and so they were dealing with the war. And now this is the war definitely affected things. I hope this comes out, but mostly I'm just like, I want to step back and be like, this game can have all the time it needs. Just figure out what you're doing. Don't rush it. Hopefully that obviously if you're running a studio, making money back eventually becomes a concern. I hope that some publisher, I know Microsoft is involved, hopefully they could step in and help this game and make sure that the studio can continue to glide along and keep these people safe or whatever. The game doesn't need to rush out. I'm in no rush to get it, but if it can come out, I have some pretty high hopes. That the game always looked super pretty, but yeah, I don't know. What's your stance on Stalker 2?
Yeah, the impression I got was that it was going to start resurfacing soon, because I had heard people make it or saying that they were going to be seeing it soon. And
sounds like it's going to be a Gamescom.
Yeah, Microsoft are going to be at Gamescom. So I assume that it's sort of coming back from its long sort of gestation period where they were just quietly working on it as and when they could. Because like there's literally no more difficult circumstances that a developer could be in working on a game. And I think most people, I say most people, it's the internet, so probably not most people, but most people have realized, like, oh, like, this game will come when it comes, and that's okay.
Yes.
I think even if they do give a December release date sometime soon, it's just as likely it gets delayed at any random point for whatever reason, purely because at some point you're dealing with much bigger real-world issues than video games.
Mm-hmm.
You're dealing with geopolitical forces, and hey, if someone starts an offensive, that game isn't coming out, and who are we to complain? Like, fine.
Yeah,
and yes, it does look good. Sorry, that was your actual question.
No, yeah, I think it looks pretty good, and yes, it's the kind of thing, you're right, where most people seem to understand. This game, it seems like it could be like the thing headlining, or one of the headliners for Xbox's presence at Gamescom. Xbox is gonna have a presence at Gamescom, obviously, but I think they're also gonna be part of Opening Night Live or do their own thing. I can't remember exactly, but you can imagine, like, this game skipped E3 SGF times. Like, it wasn't at the Keeleys in any way, so it's like, they're like, oh, we'll show it later. And to me, that was like, we'll see it next year, we'll see it maybe next Summer Game Fest. The idea that it's like, no, they got something ready to show off for Gamescom to launch it in December, that's really way more aggressive than I was expecting. But I suppose if you think back, and it was supposed to come out in April 2022, I guess the timeline actually lines up a little bit better than I thought originally. So maybe we'll give it
Jesse says in chat, and I didn't want to say it in case it hadn't been confirmed. It is confirmed playable at the
I think I remember
Gamescom.
getting the email about that. Yeah.
So, like, just anyone, if they have a demo that's far enough along that anyone can go up and play-ish, then it's probably doing okay.
Yep, exactly. And I'm hopeful for it. Although a game in December, I was like, man, December's when I'm going to catch up on stuff. And it's like, oh no, another new game coming out in December. There we go.
Game of the year prep is going to be fucking fun this year, isn't it?
It's going to be a nightmare.
Because all of these games are so easy to complete and, like, get a good taste of quickly. I
did beat Pikmin 4, and I played a ton of that game. I think my time counter was at like 35, 40 hours or something. And then, so I went back to Tears of the Kingdom, and I thought it was like at like 200. I'm at like 160 hours in that game. Although after this weekend where I played just nonstop and still not really progressing towards the end because I'm like just cleaning up a bunch of other stuff. Man, I probably am getting close to 200 hours in that game, and it's like, Jesus Christ. And I played a little bit of Baldur's Gate 3, but not nearly enough. I'm going to try to play some more of that tonight. It's just nonstop huge games and I want to be playing them all. That's the thing. They're all so good. I want to be playing them all.
Always brings up the Hi-Fi Rush is falling out of the top 10 every day, and not if I'm here to fight for it. That game was fucking incredible. That game was so good.
I do love that game. It's just a tough, rough year for anything. Okay, Forza Motorsport won't have split screen and other legacy features for launch. This is Eddie McHugh at GameSpot. Microsoft has confirmed that its upcoming racing game Forza Motorsport won't have split screen support and two other features from past games at launch. Turn 10 creative director Chris Isaki said during the Forza monthly video broadcast that the racing game will not feature split screen, spectator mode, or the ability to race against AI in some multiplayer modes. Having players come into a featured multiplayer event and taking player slots and then spectating, it's not really the racing we had intended, Isaki said. Similarly, racing with AI in featured multiplayer with all its potential impact on your safety rating also didn't make a whole lot of sense to have and is not going to be available for us at launch. And for the split screen, Isaki said that the team's heavy investment in pushing our new graphical features and our complete overhaul of the rendering engine unfortunately made split screen really difficult to implement and is also not going to be in for launch. Forza Motorsport is not the first big Xbox game to launch without features found in previous games. Halo Infinite launched without campaign co-op or Forge modes, and so on. Now, some of these modes have all these modes have been in previous Forzas, but not in every previous Forza. I think split screen has been that's one that's. But I mean, split screen seems like one of those ones that if you were working on a game and you had to cut something. Split screen in 2023 when everyone's got their own system is playing on their own device. I don't know. But the spectator mode, that hasn't always been in there. And when it is, the people really, I think the community really likes it because they use it for esports and shoutcasting and stuff like that. But it's another one where it's like, yeah, you could see how these things get cut out. And AI in multiplayer mode, I think that was like a big feature in like Forza Motorsport 4, but I don't think it's been in there since. But I could be wrong.
I I can definitely get cutting that one from like we want a balanced experience point of view, and they go so heavy on the idea, like they still have their whatever they call their drivatars now, but they do have the ghost AI stuff, and they probably don't want that affecting your ghost AI stuff, non-playable or non-player characters impacting that. This never feels good. This never feels fun. Personally, I have great memories of like going to a friend's house who had an Xbox when I didn't, and like playing Forza Motorsport co-op and like it blowing my fucking mind. But like even just from a like hearts and mind point of view, it never feels good when there's one less thing on the back of the box, when there's one less bullet point. And I'm curious if it's always been like there's been this thing going around like, oh, Xbox is very hands off with its developers. Is it that the Forza team was like, hey, we really want to push graphics as far as we can this time, we're going to focus on that above all else, which is perfectly fine if they want to do that? Or like, is there a world where if Microsoft was more hands-on, would they be like, hey, no, this is like something that people have come to expect, like focus a little bit less on the graphics, people will only notice that so much, let's make sure we have feature parity with previous versions?
Yeah, it's. I think that Microsoft, the word seems to be that they let these studios make their own choices and their own priorities on that stuff. And obviously, a company like Turn 10, a studio like Turn 10 is going to have the telemetry from how people use their game to know, like the most painless areas to take the scalpel to, right? And Forza Motorsport 8, Forza Motorsport, I think, they're kind of rebooting. I don't know if they're calling it 8. They are, this is like the big actual rework. Like they said, they're a rendering engine. This is like their first big improvement to the tech in a very long time. They used to be on an every other year schedule. Here we are. They've taken multiple years now to get this game ready. I think if everything else hits with this game, if the racing feels great, if it does look visually stunning, if it's running at 4K and gets, it can go above 60 frames per second or whatever, which, the Forza games have done. Maybe they get 4K 120 or something like that. If all that stuff works for this, then I think it's going to be easy to forgive any absences. But also, it would be nice if these things get added over time. Split screen, something I will probably never use, but the people who do use it, I'm sure will be very happy if it does get added later.
Do you think that this is a sort of game that they're looking at as a platform, or that they want to go back to, hey, no, we really liked it when we had the every second year cadence with these two studios? Do you think Microsoft has a preference as to what direction this goes? Yeah,
I think that they would. I think they would prefer a platform, but I think because of all the licensing involved in these games, doing that might be prohibitive, might be difficult. So I think they will probably stick to some sort of cadence, maybe not every other year, but maybe every 3 years or something like that. Forza Horizon, I think, could still come out every other year. In terms of the demand for that game, I guess Forza Motorsport, its audience probably would be happy with every other year as well. But I think it makes more sense for that to come out, like to maybe staggered a little bit. But Horizon can keep coming as long as they have new settings and stuff. Although I guess maybe Horizon's formula is getting a little long in the tooth too, so wouldn't mind a bigger change there. But it doesn't need to change to technology necessarily. They'll get that from Motorsport. They'll build on whatever this is doing. Kind of want them to just like step away from yeah, bro, we're at a party. Oh my God. And everybody knows who you are and you're on social media. I'm like, okay.
Well, do I have the game for you? It's called the Crew Motorfest. You're going to love it.
Let's go. That game is, I kind of respect it because it's just like, we tried a bunch of other shit with the Crew. Let's just make Forza Horizon. Let's just do one of those exactly. And it is a carbon copy of Forza Horizon. Hey, you got to do what you got to do. Switch hits 30 million lifetime unit sales during July. This is from the Japan monthly charts. And this comes from Jeffrey Rousseau at gamesindustry.biz. During July in Japan, the Nintendo Switch reached a lifetime sales total of 30 million consoles. Famitsu's monthly retail sales data from June 26th to July 30th shows that the console sold 407,000 units across its standard, light, and OLED systems. By comparison, Sony's PlayStation 5 console hit 243,000 systems sold during the month. Sony's hardware has moved a total of 4 million units in the country. Nintendo led with 947,000 box titles in Japan for software sales, outpacing Square Enix's 109,000 and Spike Chunsoft's 101,000. Nintendo's newly released Pikmin 4 was the biggest selling title of the month at physical copies moved. It has sold nearly 80,000 of Pikmin 3's lifetime sales with 10 days after launch, which is very impressive, and that doesn't include digital, although it wouldn't included Pikmin 3's digital either. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom moved 92,600 copies sold in the month. Meanwhile, Spike Chunsoft's newest title, Master Detective Archives Raincode, sold 74,400 copies. Switch hitting 30 million, and games just continuing to fly off the shelf for the Switch. That's the story for the Switch and has been in Japan. And really, the Switch is doing seemingly better than ever in Japan. There's always the question about where is the temperature at in Japan for console video games. Are they, a lot of people like moved on to mobile and they're just going to play on their phone from now on. But Switch has proven that there's still a massive audience in Japan that wants to play games on console, especially if it's like a hybrid. But I think Nintendo's also done a really admirable job of getting people excited about the Switch in Japan in terms of using their marketing and using like the Mario movie and things like that. And all that seems to have like rekindled this love affair that they have for Nintendo. And then meanwhile, the PlayStation 5 is selling well, but its games never show, not never, but rarely does the top 10 best-selling games of the week in Japan have a PlayStation 5 game on it. It's almost always entirely Switch. So it's like people might be buying PS5s, although I people rumor or they speculate that a lot of those PS5s in Japan are going into China. I don't know. I have no idea about that. I would love to like investigate that, but who has the time? I don't know. Do you think that console gaming has reached this nice like equilibrium in Japan going forward, Lexi?
I think it's less that console gaming has. I think it's that Nintendo has realized that they've found an equilibrium between handheld and console.
Yeah.
And that like this is a model that really works for the demographic in Japan. They're just not that into physical like consoles being stationary, and the idea of having a system where all of your biggest games are also coming to a handheld is really, really nice. Like the DS was a great game, but the only real biggest game that Nintendo had that was still coming to the DS was, the Pokemon stuff. And everything else, like, oh no, like the big boy version of this game is coming to the Wii or the Wii U or whatever. I did some very quick napkin math, and if you look at the amount of Switches that have been sold, that's roughly 24% of the Japanese population that own a Switch.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yep. I mean, a lot of those are going to be multi-Switch households, but not enough. Like, you're right. Like, that's, if you just look at that raw number, that is very wild. And it's kind of inexplicable that it's the system can be that popular because it's like, the Japan, the culture has mostly moved on to mobile gaming, but it's like, no, Nintendo found a way with Pokemon, with Zelda, with Splatoon, now Pikmin 4 even just being this massive like thing in Japan. Like there's this love affair going on with that. And it's, man, that they have figured it out. And maybe part of it is the Japanese audience sees that Sony is like looking elsewhere, like it's it's doing the over the shoulder, like looking at the other girl thing, because Sony isn't interested in making games in Japan for Japan, because they need those big blockbusters that have that global appeal, because that's where they need to make their money. They need games that sell like 10 million copies. But the irony here is Nintendo makes games that have this appeal in Japan, Splatoon and Animal Crossing, all these things, and then those games sell 4 or 5 times better than anything else on a PlayStation or an Xbox or PC globally. And so like that, by appealing to us a more niche or to a more culturally specific ideal, that still has a global appeal at the same time. I don't know. I find that interesting, and I think that's probably been a mistake by Sony a little bit over the last couple of years, because they got afraid of that, and now all their games kind of feel the same. I don't know. Is there anything there?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's an element, like, I was lamenting when a friend came to visit, like, just how much it fucking sucks that Japan Studios isn't around anymore.
Yeah.
Because those games gave that company so much personality, and it was when they were playing Astro Bosh or Astro's Playroom for the first time. It was the first time they'd ever used a PS5. I was like, you have to play this. And they were like, oh shit, like, this has me thinking about Sony's old games in a way that's usually only reserved for Nintendo stuff. And even if those games weren't selling the most, even if Vib Ribbon wasn't like a massive seller. It created this like culture and this feel-good nature around the console. And like, as much as people like their PlayStation, it's not a blue skies happy-go-lucky feeling about it. It's like, no, this is like where I play grim and gritty murder simulators, and that's fine. But the thing I'm curious about is when Nintendo does upgrade to a more powerful console, do you think there's a bit of them that tries to requash those Japanese developers that have been focusing on the more powerful consoles, people like OGG and Square Enix, who have been focusing on next-gen games? Do you think they finally go, hey, maybe we should like bring some of those games to our platform and get them selling here too, because they obviously have a market?
Yeah, I don't. Nintendo's not the company that makes overtures, right? That was the question of these. And Nintendo going to try to get like RGG and some of those other studios after that. Yeah, so I think that they look at it and they're like, I think it's pretty similar to what like Gabe said about Steam, right? He's like, we're just gonna do our thing, and we're gonna try to make the best thing possible, and then that should then lead to people wanting to come work with us because we put so much effort into making this thing the best thing possible. Now, that does work for Steam. That's rarely ever worked for Nintendo. And Nintendo's obviously looking at it in a different way. It's like, we just want to delight our players and be different and stand out. But I think
that's what Gabe Newell is like too.
That's true.
He's just a happy-go-lucky guy.
Yeah, exactly. With his knives. Yeah. Oh man, knives. But Nintendo, even when Nintendo gets everything like, okay, we're going to have the more powerful system, and this system is now just a Switch 2 in a lot of ways, and it's very familiar at this point. And there's a Steam Deck's out there and Roger allies, so it's like people aren't going to be hesitant about that side of things anymore. So we should go out there and try to get these companies on board. And Nintendo, I don't think Nintendo really does that and won't do that. I think that they will be happy to be like, we make our games and they sell. And if you want to come bring your games to us, like if you want to be Microsoft to make a 10-year commitment, we'll take it. But we're going to be happy working with all these indie developers that are selling way better on Switch than anywhere else. Like they're actually much more pliable. They probably prefer working with like Hades selling probably a couple million copies on the Switch or close to it. Like they're like, no, that was a much better experience than going out and try to deal with a fickle Sega or Electronic Arts or something like that. And that's worked for Nintendo.
You're totally right, because like looking at this list now of the June and July, or the July sales from Famitsu, it's like the top 10 games sold. The publishers are Nintendo, Spike Chunsoft, Square, Nintendo, Microsoft,
which is Minecraft Switch Edition.
Yeah, Nintendo, and like they are way more happy to be getting 100% of the profits from those games than splishing however much they have to with the licensing fees for other publishers selling games on their console.
And I got to say, just that makes me happy and excited, because I am someone who likes a game like Pikmin 4, and I think Pikmin 4 is doing great everywhere. But the fact that it's doing so well in Japan, it goes back to the days of like, well, the game does well in Japan, so they're going to keep making it. And it's like, I thought that stuff was over. But I think Nintendo has found it like, no, for Nintendo, it's not. In fact, it's not over. It's getting better. It's like they've improved their standing in Japan to the point where it's like, yeah, if a game does really well there, we're going to keep making it. Like, that's something that Sony and Microsoft would never do anymore. So, yeah, this is I get a little bit chills about that, because I'm like, okay, man, Pikmin 5 might be a reality. All right, in Japan, speaking of, 1993's Mario movie is getting a 30th anniversary 4K theatrical re-release. Let's fucking go. This is from My Nintendo News. Long before Nintendo. Yes, get her on the phone. Let her know. Let's get plane tickets and let's go. We're going to Kyoto, everybody. Long before Nintendo and Illumination ever thought of creating an animated movie based on the former company's Super Mario franchise, there was a live-action film that didn't get to experience the success that this year's Mario movie got to enjoy. This year marks 30 years since the release of Super Mario Bros., alternatively known as Super Mario Bros. The movie. There hasn't been much acknowledgement of the anniversary in Europe and in the Americas, even though the film has developed a cult following decades after its release. However, it's a different story in Japan, where it was released with the name Super Mario Goddess of the Demon Empire. Beginning on September 15th, Japanese audiences will be able to get to attend a theatrical re-release of the film. Not only that, but the version will be a 4K restoration of the movie. I I need this. I need this real bad. I want this. It's hard to like watch that movie. It's not impossible, but it's, you know, you can't just go track it down.
It's hard to find a nice quality.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, because I think it was last year during like the height of my exams. The Start Menu Discord decided we'd start doing some movie nights, and we were like, let's do the Mario movie. And like, I was so out of it and so fucking tired, and I was like, what the fuck is going on?
Was that your first time seeing it?
It was. I had seen it through osmosis, which was like I knew all the stuff in it, but like actually sitting there and watching it and like having it wash over me, I was just like, what the fuck?
It's different. Yeah, it's a little different.
I enjoy how fucking weird that movie is, similar to like Jested.
Yes,
and
same.
I super appreciate it because it came out at the time of like Super Mario Bros. 3, right? Like they just had so little to work with.
It was a little bit after Super Mario Bros. 3, right? But right in that area, yeah, right in that area. It was Super Mario World was out by this point. Yeah.
But I asked chat to link to a clip, and Hammond of Texas did, and it's the clip of Bob Hoskins talking about seeing Mario for the first time and looking at him on the screen, jumping up and down, and then just going, I used to play King Lear.
Yeah. God, what a all-time quote. That's great stuff. Oh, Bob Hoskins. Rip to that guy. He was a good dude. That movie is it's special and amazing and weird. And I'm glad we live in a universe where we can get both the most generic and safe animated movie that makes a ton of money in Super Mario Brothers, whatever, that's fine. And that this movie at one time existed.
We also need more hot, sweaty John Leguizamo.
Oh, like, yeah. We'll never get enough of that.
Yeah, we got plenty in Romeo plus Juliet, but they really didn't capitalize on that era of him.
Yes. You know what that movie really was, that Super Mario Brothers movie? It was the post-Batman world. Batman 1989 came out and was this big licensed thing that just crushed. And then all these movie companies were like, they didn't think we need superhero movies, which would have been the thing that would have happened today and would have been right. That stuff would have, they were like, we need licensed characters that are as big as Batman, no matter where they come from, whether it's like Dick Tracy, which is another movie that got made that's pretty similar in its oddness to Super Mario Brothers, or Super Mario Brothers and all that stuff. And they're like, we got to make it like Tim Burton style.
Yeah, even in the mid-90s, fucking no kids knew what Dick Tracy was.
Fuck, no, they did not. No. That movie rolls too, though, to be fair. All right. Pokemon Company having conversations about how to ensure game quality with regular releases. This is from Nintendo Everything. According to Takato Utsu...
Finally talking about it.
Yes, so at least we're going to have an honest conversation. We ain't going to do shit about it. From Takato Utsunomiya, the chief operating officer of the Pokemon Company, conversations are being had about how to keep this up the series' regular releases of games while also maintaining quality. It's like, I think I spotted your problem right there, homie.
Yeah, I think you maybe should have had this conversation a couple of years back.
And it's like, that's the regular releases part. That's the problem. Slow down. Just slow down. It takes longer to make games today. While Pokemon...
You only have like 300 people working at your company. What are you doing?
Right, yes, maybe that's the other... It's like, spend more money, take more time, or make a bad game. It's like, well, let's just make it worse. That's fine. Yeah. While Pokemon Scarlet and Violet were well received from a gameplay standpoint, things came to a head last year when some fans expressed disappointment from a technical level. Performance and glitches were a problem in particular. Months later, things still aren't at where some players had wanted. Some believe that part of the problem affecting Pokemon games came down to the release schedule. Game Freak often puts out at least one game a year. 2023 is an exception, though. Scarlet and Violet, yeah, but DLC, that still counts, I promise you. Because that's, back in the day, they would just put out Pokemon Yellow, and that's what Scarlet and Violet is the equivalent of. Utsunomiya had this to say in a group interview at the Pokemon World Championships. I think in general, if you look at the past, the path we've taken up until now has been this constant release, always regularly releasing products on a fairly fixed kind of cadence, you might say. Always having these products able to be introduced and new experiences for our customers, and that's how we've operated up until now. I think we're still operating in that way, but there's more and more conversations as the development environments change about how we can continue to do this while making sure that we're ensuring really quality products are also being introduced. something's got to give, right? I mean, something has given, and it's been the quality of the technical releases. That's not new. That's been the Pokemon Company for a very long time. They always had some of the worst performing games on the 3DS, and now here we are on the Switch. And this is like the one company that still is, they didn't have to learn HD graphics pipelines like when everyone else did, and everyone else went through those growing pains. And like, Japanese games were like, oh, Japanese games are bad now because a few companies were struggling to adapt to HD. Well, they went through those growing pains, and they've been fine for a decade now. Pokemon Company, however, and Game Freak, not so much. They just refuse to get with the times, and now here they are struggling to make HD games.
Yeah, so something that the Pokemon Championships reminded me, like, I do not like Pokemon. I've always been of the belief it's a child's game developed for, like, angry 35-year-olds.
Yeah, man, that sounds like a great genre.
Yeah, that sounds like every fucking Nintendo game Mike likes.
Yeah. Hey, I like Metroid too.
But watching a friend of mine, Alicia Haddock, was covering the Nintendo Championships, and it's really interesting to compare that to something like BlizzCon, where it is a internally run, like, convention for the fans. But, like, at BlizzCon, people got, like, straight up real angry at Blizzard at a certain point. Whereas Nintendo Championships, the vibes there were, like, always great. Everyone was always loving it, even though, like, people are very aware that game is not in a good state.
Yep.
Both competitively and, like, technically. And so it's really interesting to see just, like, how conditioned that community is.
Yeah, you got to go head empty on Pokemon, right?
Yeah, to, like, ultimately, they're going to keep on getting away with it no matter how long the games keep selling, and the games will keep selling. And the really shitty thing about it is that all that will happen is the community will get worse and more toxic and will get more vitriolic, and people like community managers and people who are new to the community and marginalized people within the community will wind up bearing the brunt of a shitty community that feels like they're never listened to. And that sucks. You're basically slowly turning your community into like a League of Legends style. Everyone is angry all the time and trying to find someone to blame. And that's shit.
Yep, it's the kind of thing. Yeah, if whenever criticism becomes disallowed within a community for whatever reason, if it's like, well, no, I don't want to hear that. I don't want you talking about that. You're right. That always gets turned. Like if someone who is voicing that criticism comes from a marginalized background, they will be attacked for that because they've offended the identity of these fans. Yeah, absolutely. And what can a studio like Game Freak and all that stuff do about it? They can take ownership of the problems and try to promise to do something about it. But so far, that's not happened. And we'll see. I mean, this DLC is going to come out for Scarlet and Violet. We'll see how that runs, but I'm not expecting any big improvements to that game.
Yeah, John Jenner in the chat makes a great point that it's happening in the Destiny community at the moment, and it fucking sucks to watch. It's really shitty to see a community that's dissatisfied with the product, and at some point when the developer doesn't address the product, the community starts trying to find people who they can take aim at, who are like flagship leaders of the product, whether it be community managers or community members. And it's really shitty for those people. And yeah, I know. I don't know how you fix it. I do know how you fix it, but I don't think companies have much of an interest in fixing it sometimes.
All right, we are going to get to the poll from Friday. I got it around here somewhere. Let me line it up real quick for you, everybody. While I do that, actually, you know what? It's ready. Here we go. I asked, have you ever tried GTA role-playing? And I forgot to give it just a plain no option. So 9% said yes, 34% said no, but I want to, and 57% said no, but I would try in GTA 6. So imagine the people that would just say no didn't answer. Let's just imagine that. So yeah, I think that I would try role playing at some point, but it's like the kind of thing where yeah, obviously a big part of that is streaming it. So maybe I'm just doing it for Giant Bomb. If we can make that happen, that would be pretty cool. I would be all for that though. So yeah, is that something you would be interested in participating in?
I would, but like I don't think I'd be interested in doing it in one of the big public servers, because the way that just sounds like a hassle and it sounds like a job. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't need that. Like, I don't need to be doing my dailies in Destiny to become a job. I don't need like crushing fucking grapes, going to work, being a job in like GTA. I don't need that. I would rather just fuck around with my friends.
Yeah, the part of me is like, back when MMOs were new to me, at least, and Star Wars Galaxies was coming along, and they're like, everyone's gonna have a job in this world. Like, you could just be a barber. You could just be a barber in the Star Wars universe. And to me, I'm like, that sounds fucking awesome. Like, I want that job in Star Wars. That's fine. And then of course the game came out and it's like, no, everyone that is actually playing this just wants to be a Jedi, and becoming a Jedi was super, super difficult, and it was this huge hassle. And so they had to like rework the game and make it easy for everyone to become a Jedi. It's like, oh man, there's something lost there about like having this world where people have to just play their role. And so like to have that come back in this way, but have it be community driven, I find that very fascinating, but also it's intimidating. Like you said, like I want to go in there and I know I'm going to want to eventually just mess around. And if that like gets me in trouble, if there are consequences to that for the people running the server, then it's like, okay, I better not even try to like broach that possibility.
Yeah.
So.
I don't need someone giving out to me for having fun in a video game.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
No.
Yeah.
I don't need like those flashbacks to like school of like a teacher giving out to you. Like I'm fine.
I got a new poll that we're going to answer on Wednesday. When we come back, we have, of course, Bombcast tomorrow. But in the meantime, while we get that ready, Lexi, what do you have going on? What do you want to tell people about? Where can they find you on the internet?
I have so much going on. Loads of stuff that isn't coming out for a while. I will have a bunch of Gamescom stuff. So check my Twitter, basically Lexi, both spelt with I's. And if you want to check out any of Start Menu's work, we recently had a incredible 3,000 word review in progress go up on Baldur's Gate 3 by Kate Robinson. She knocked out of the park on that one. And I'm delighted that we got a code for a game that big. It's always nice when we can actually give someone the experience of reviewing a big game. And so check out the Start Menu on Twitter, or if you want to contact us about like getting started in the industry and you're a new journalist trying to find like opportunities and support, you can email us hello@startmenu.co.uk.
What do you think about? Did you pay attention to that Baldur's Gate sort of brouhaha over the weekend? Where I think, so my understanding is like Destin over at IGN put out a video. It's like, this is like proves that other developers are not doing what they should, but when they release broken games, because Baldur's Gate 3 proves that you can release a game that is huge and interactive and everything's put together and buttoned up. And there was a big reaction. I didn't really pay attention to it, so if I get anything wrong, let me know. But it's like, what's your take on all that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's only like so much I want to say for the sake of employability, but also like the video itself very much so felt made for TikTok and felt weirdly like watching conservative media, where like it was just like, this is why
YouTube
these people are lying to you.
Yeah,
it was very strange tone for IGN of all places to be taking. I think that the message overall was pretty. It wasn't a fair framing of what was actually said. As someone that like covers journalism, and like Destin's he has like a BA in media, like he knows the stuff that framing is very important, and so I think he really should have been more aware that like this isn't a particularly honest way to frame this. This is a way to frame this that will get people enticed to talk about it, but what sort of people are you getting talking about it? And even underneath the comments, you go underneath the comments of that IGN thing, it's not people flaming them being like, hey, this is cringe. It's a load of people who are like, yeah, these fucking lazy game developers, we've been saying this, and now even IGN are saying this, we were fucking right.
Yeah.
And like it doesn't help anyone. I think, and for the reason it's an unfair way to present it is because like Larian are in a extremely unique position. They are a independent developer who don't have a publisher over them, who have made enough money from their other projects
and
that they can have an
early
extremely
access.
long that they can have an extremely long development time. They also had early access to have money flowing in for a long time and get feedback for a long time. Like most game developers don't have this. So framing the story as like, oh, Baldur's Gate is so good compared to other games just feels unfair, because like those other games aren't trying to even pursue what Baldur's Gate is pursuing. I wasn't a fan of the video, and I think that the best thing they can do from it is like just take the L and move on. And like, I don't want people haranguing Destin for ages, because Destin has done good work in the past, and like sometimes you just have to get the work done on the day, and you write something that later you look back on and you go, well, that was probably a bit too inflammatory. I've done that, and I felt bad about it afterwards. So
Same.
like, I get it.
Exactly. That's where I'm like, I know I've done it on this show where I might have used an example of a game doing well to be like, and this is why this other thing is bad. I think like in the game, like the example Baldur's, I think we always try to be careful. I don't use a game to attack another game or other developers or things like that. And maybe he didn't mention anyone specifically. Again, I'm catching up on this, but I think it's worth actually exploring these ideas. I understand it's like that this video didn't really actually explore anything. It just kind of echoed all of that sort of vitriol that you get from outrage merchants on YouTube and things like that. But yeah, I don't know. If anything, I hope Baldur's Gate 3 makes more people consider early access as a viable way to make your game. But that's it. If other developers can't make that work for whatever reason, that's fine. I'm not going to come at you.
Do you want to know what Baldur's Gate has reminded me? Hades 2 is launching at some point this year.
Yeah, it's an early access of this year, and boy, that's just the most frightening thing. What if I want to play that, and I'm gonna want to play it, and I'm not gonna have time for that. I'm so scared. Lexi, I'm really so scared.
Yeah, they're all gonna be. It's been a year of like hot companions. Yeah. There's been too many hot companions in these games.
Companions are returning.
Olimar.
Yes.
Who else?
Yes, there you go.
No one.
Louis from Pikmin 4 as well. So there we go. All right, everybody. Let's. I think we're gonna get out of here. Lexi, thank you so much for spending today talking with me about video games.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Always fun.
We'll be back with another episode on Wednesday here on Giant Bomb. Speaking of Giant Bomb, later today I will be streaming more Mortal Kombat. So I'll be making that happen, try to keep the story mode going along. We got about a third of the way through the MK9 campaign. We'll make some more progress today. I'm looking forward to that.
I have some Mortal Kombat questions for you, so I might need to swing by.
Yeah, swing on in. Yeah. I'll be in this room, so everyone that's friends of the site can swing on in. I did an @friends of the site thing in our chat here in this thing, and it turns out if you click on like that notification, it just brings you into this room. So people are like,
I saw that.
People are just people are like, oh, what is this? And I'm like, oh, thanks for joining. I didn't realize that was what's going to happen. And they're like, what? Why'd you do this? I'm like, I'm sorry. I did not mean to cause this hassle for you.
A flaming room.
Yes, and then you have to tell me that you can't actually do this right now. I didn't mean to put you in that position, but I'm an old man. I don't know how technology works. All right, you're the best audience in gaming. We'll be back with the Bombcast tomorrow. Until then, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye. All right, I got to get to a meeting, so who should we raid? Let's